Hey there, do you know how sometimes you're writing and you just stop? You look at a word and think, why on earth is it spelled that way? English spelling can feel like a total mystery, right? Like there were no rules at all. But what if I told you there's a hidden logic, and even better, a method to explain not just spelling, but pretty much any complicated thing? All right, let's get into it. So let's start with a classic. We've all seen this one, right? Bigger instead of bigger. But the really interesting thing isn't just which one is correct. It's the why. I mean, why do we double that G? Understanding the why is the secret sauce here. It's not just about this one spelling rule, it's about learning how to explain anything well. So here's our game plan. We're going to start with this little spelling puzzle, then we'll decode the rule behind it. After that, I'll show you a simple tool to make it super clear. And from there, we'll see how to turn that logic into a lesson that people actually remember. Okay, first things first, the spelling rule puzzle. This isn't about just memorizing a bunch of random stuff. We're actually going to unlock the logic, the system that tells us exactly when we need to double those consonants. And that system has a name. It's often called the 1-1-1 rule. I know, it sounds kind of like a secret code. And to be honest, the official definition can sound just as confusing. So let's break it down. Okay, so here's the official rule. If there is a one-syllable word with one vowel and one consonant after the vowel, whoa. I mean, it's technically right, but wow, what a mouthful. Can you imagine trying to explain that to someone, especially a kid? Their eyes would just glaze right over. This is a perfect example of an explanation that's correct, but totally unhelpful. So let's pull it apart and see what's really going on. The first piece of the puzzle is pretty straightforward. The base word has to have just one syllable. You know, like big, run, or stop. One clap, simple. Second, that word needs to have only a single vowel. Big has an I, run has a U. But a word like book, that has two O's, so it's already out, doesn't qualify. And finally, the third part, there can only be one consonant right after that single vowel. In big, you've got the G right after the I. Perfect. But in a word like jump, you've got two consonants, M and P, so that breaks the rule. Okay, so we've got our three conditions, but just listing them off is still kind of tricky to remember, right? This is where we make the leap from a confusing rule to something you can actually see and use. And this is how we make it make sense. We turn that clunky rule into a super simple checklist. Let's try it with big. One syllable? Yep. One vowel? Check. One consonant right after it? Yes again. Three S's in a row? Boom. You double that last letter to make bigger. Now, what about jump? It's one syllable and has one vowel, but wait, it has two consonants after the vowel, M and P. That's a no. And the second you hit a no, you stop. The rule doesn't apply. That's why it's jumping, not jumping. See? This little checklist is a game changer. For the word flat, you get three checks. Yup, yup, and yep. So you double the T for flatten. But for book, it fails the one vowel test right away because of those two O's. So you don't double the K in booked. The system just works. So we've broken down this complex rule into a simple tool. That's a huge step. But explaining something isn't just about logic, it's about connecting with people. Let's see how we can build this into a truly great lesson. And this is the million-dollar question, isn't it? Having a correct explanation is only half the battle. How do you actually make it stick? How do you turn a checklist into something that actually gets a learner excited? Well, the answer is you have to build a narrative around it. You need a blueprint to turn a dry rule into an engaging story. And we can find a perfect example of this by looking at how you'd create an educational video. Check this out. This simple prompt has the entire recipe for great teaching baked right into it. It's not just about dumping information. It's about creating an experience. Look at those keywords, fun, educational, and knowing exactly who you're talking to. And look at the structure this blueprint lays out. It's not a boring lecture. You start with a cheerful greeting to connect. You make it memorable with a fun story, then you deliver the logical part. You back it up with examples, and you finish by getting the viewer involved with a mini activity. This is how you build an understanding that actually lasts. And that brings us to the most important part of all of this. The big takeaway here is that the process we just walked through, going from that dense rule to this engaging blueprint, that whole journey is the lesson. I mean, just look at this transformation. We started over on the left with a wall of text that was technically perfect, but let's be honest, pretty much impossible to absorb. And we ended up on the right with a simple, human-centered plan. This is the journey from just knowing something to being able to truly explain it. So here it is, the universal formula for explaining just about anything. First, you deconstruct. You take that big, messy, complicated idea and break it down into its simplest parts. That was our 1-1-1 checklist. Then you reconstruct. You build that information back up into an engaging experience, like our chart. And all along the way, you connect with your audience, making it all relatable and memorable. This method isn't just for spelling. It works for explaining a science concept, a business plan, or even just an idea you're passionate about. The ability to deconstruct, reconstruct, and connect is the real key to clarity. So, I guess the only question left is, what complex idea are you going to simplify next?